Hi, welcome to our Chapter 1 discussion of Introduction to AutoCAD. This is for Drafting 112 with Blue Mountain Community College. And I'm going to start with a PowerPoint presentation that is provided by the publishers of the textbook. And we're going to real quickly go through this, and then we're going to get into AutoCAD and actually start looking at the program. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. Okay, so Chapter 1 includes really an introduction to some fundamentals about AutoCAD. But in addition to that, we want to talk about the history and importance of engineering graphics. We're drawing with a computer, but we're doing a task that was done by hand for much longer than it was done with computers. So it's important to understand why we're doing what we're doing and why some of the things that might seem kind of finicky are actually important. We'll take a quick look at the development of CAD systems. We probably won't talk too much about AutoCAD 2015. We're using it essentially because it is an industry standard computer-aided drafting program, and it is one of the most common computer-aided drafting programs that you will find in industry, and so that is why we are teaching with this program. Additionally, Autodesk, the makers of AutoCAD, have gotten very generous to students in terms of sharing their program, as I'm sure you've discovered by now. And that makes it very attractive as a program to teach because it means that you as students can utilize this program throughout your academic career. The most important thing we're going to do in this chapter is actually develop some familiarity with the AutoCAD screen layout and some basic toolbars. And we're also going to talk about how to make some of the most basic and fundamental shapes that we use. Those are lines and circles, as well as how to fix our mistakes, because they're inevitable, by using the erase command. And we are going to have a discussion about coordinates and how we define positions in AutoCAD. It's very important to understand that. And of course, even beyond that, we got to learn how to save a drawing. So let's go ahead and talk about technical drawings. Now, technical drawings differ from creative drawings because technical drawings exist to impart information. In other words, an engineering drawing or a technical drawing is designed to give information about an engineered object or a building that we're going to draw, or something that has got to be built to certain specifications. So these drawings are used to fully and clearly define the requirements for engineered items. They've got to be created in accordance with standardized conventions for layout, nomenclature, interpretation, appearance, and size, because they are tools of communication. So think of this as a language. Just like when you are communicating in English, everybody needs to be speaking English or you don't communicate clearly. If you only have English and your audience only has Spanish, then your message is not going to be clearly passed on. The same thing is true in drawings. This is why we have to become familiar with and comply with the standards for engineering drawing, because it is a tool of communication. Like I said earlier, for years this was done by hand, and we will learn, at least passingly, we will learn about some of those early hand techniques, mostly so that you can appreciate what we're doing in AutoCAD, because some of what we do is still related to how we used to do this by hand. We now almost exclusively create our engineering drawings on the computer using AutoCAD because it's simply more precise and it's faster. And it is easier to make modifications. If you make a modification in a hand-done drawing, eventually you essentially have to redo the entire drawing. Whereas if you make a modification in an AutoCAD drawing, it's just a matter of moving a few lines in a computerized file. So this is why we are going to draw in AutoCAD. So let's talk about how we open AutoCAD. Now, you've hopefully either downloaded the software or you have it on the lab computer that you are using. And whichever one you're doing, you do need to have access to AutoCAD for this class, specifically AutoCAD 2015. So make sure you've done that. Either downloaded AutoCAD from autodesk.com. You can create a student account using your student email address, or if you are near a BMCC campus, the Pendleton campus, you can utilize the computers in the CAD lab in the basement of Pioneer Hall here on the Pendleton campus. They also have AutoCAD 2015. What you will find is an icon, and I need to give you my other screen. So I'm going to stop my share for a minute because I've got two screens set up here. So I'm going to go to the other one now. And what you will find is an icon on your desktop that is this red A. And that is AutoCAD 2015. Double-click that icon to start AutoCAD, or you might also, depending on your operating system, find this on your Start button in the Autodesk subfolder. Right there, AutoCAD 2015. Single-click this, so open up that AutoCAD 2015 subfolder, and then single click on this AutoCAD 2015 icon to start the program. Now it takes a long time to start, so I already have it open. And this is the screen you will see when you open the AutoCAD program. To start a new drawing, click right here on Start Drawing. Okay. So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint slide for a second because I want to walk you through this graphic because it's pretty handy. And this graphic, this same graphic, is one you'll want to become familiar with. And this gives you the basic contents and the locations of different words we're going to use within when we start working with AutoCAD. For example, application menu. You want to know that when we say application menu, we mean this icon up here in the corner. When we say quick access toolbar, we mean this ribbon up here. The info center is this box. Drawing tabs are actually right here at the top of your drawing space, just like the tabs on your browser. Ribbon tabs and panels, those are across the top here. This is your ribbon. The view cube is this little thing right here. We use it to look at our drawing in different ways and in different positions. This whole window is your graphics window. This is your graphics cursor. That is your friend. It's like your pencil tip, usually. Your command line area is down here at the bottom. And you will always be able to see your cursor coordinates display down here in this ribbon, and that's important to understand. Quick access toolbars, the navigation toolbar. Let's take a look at AutoCAD and see what all of this looks like in AutoCAD. So here I've switched over to my AutoCAD. And once you get used to AutoCAD, it's not too bad, but it's just like any new environment. You have to get used to how you get around. And AutoCAD can be a fairly fickle mistress, so you do need to pay attention to details and make sure that you don't skip any steps as we're going through these tutorials until you understand what is going to happen. So here's our application menu. When we click on this application menu, we get commands related to files. So this will open a new file. This will open a saved file. Save, it saves your file, right? And save as will let you save your drawing as a name other than what it currently has. You can also export AutoCAD files out as other formats. Probably one of the most useful you're going to find is as a PDF. And what this does is it literally takes your AutoCAD file and turns it into a PDF that you can send to somebody that doesn't have AutoCAD, so they could open an electronic version of the document in any format. So the other thing I want you to notice is at the bottom right now, there's this little bitty arrow. And when I click on it down here, it scrolls all the way to the bottom. This is common in AutoCAD. You can also publish your drawing in a couple of different ways. AutoCAD does have 3D properties or 3D capabilities. We are not going to use AutoCAD for 3D in this course. In fact, at Blue Mountain, we generally use SolidWorks for our 3D drawing, and that's pretty common throughout industry, although some people are using AutoCAD's 3D properties. We aren't going to go into 3D in this class. This class is strictly a two-dimensional course. Sorry, we're stuck in Flatland for a while. This menu is also where you print your files and where you access your drawing utilities. And we'll talk more about that as we go. And you can close. Now what this does is it actually closes the current drawing, so we aren't going to do that. Once we've got a menu open, if we want to get out of it, we can just click once again on the icon that opened it. There are some quick access commands right here in the ribbon beside that icon. So you can create a new document by clicking on the new, open, save, save as, and print. This little button right here will undo whatever you just did. This one will redo a previous command. Okay, the next line down, this one here is called the AutoCAD menu bar. So for example, right now we're on the Home tab. We could go to the View, and we get a new tab. But right here is also something that you'll want. This is the way that you customize your quick access toolbar. Okay, if you don't see a tool that you want, be aware of these little arrows down here that will give you more things that you can look at. Brings up this whole great big options menu. We will talk about this later as we go through. You can also find additional options, for example, on palettes. If you don't see what you want, click on that little drop down and you will find more things. All right. This might look a little bit different than what is shown in the textbook. I know mine looks a little different than what's shown in the textbook. We will figure this out as we go through, and we will utilize the tools that we've got. And it's just a matter of getting familiar with your interface. Okay. As I said, this is your drawing area. This little guy down here is your origin. Now, the thing to understand about AutoCAD is that AutoCAD stores your drawings actually as a database of coordinates. So this little guy down here in the corner is very important. He's your XY origin. In other words, that's the 0, 0 point. Hopefully you're familiar with coordinate systems. If you are not familiar with the XY coordinate system, you hopefully will be by the end of this lesson. And if you're still struggling with it, I will put some exercises and some information out that you can utilize to help you familiarize yourself. But essentially, your x coordinate gives the horizontal distance from this point, and the y coordinate gives the vertical distance from this point. So for example, right there, I moved my cursor to this first grid point intersection, and that point is 5 horizontal units and 5 vertical units from the origin. Now what I'm talking about there is what we call absolute positioning, and we'll get there. But the graphics cursor is where my crosshairs are. This is how I draw, and we'll draw in just a minute. Okay. Down here on the other side at the bottom of the screen, there's something that says Model. And this, if we click on it, oops, okay. So you can see it changed my view. It changed it to the paper view. This is what we would get if we printed this on a default layout. We will get to printing later. We want to go back to the model view. And you just toggle by clicking back and forth. Or sorry, you click, and you can also see these tabbies down here. Click on that one that says model to get back to your model view. Now this one will turn your drawing display grid off or on. And this turns your snap mode off or on. Now snap mode means that your points will snap to your grid points. And this is useful if your grid is set up to be similar to the dimensions in your drawing. And there is a video included with your textbook. So remember, in the textbook you have a disc, and on that disc are instructional videos, tutorials for some of the exercises. And you can utilize that video and that will give you an example of what I'm talking about here. These other choices down here have to do with how our cursor operates. And we will deal with those more as we go through. Okay. What I'm going to do now is actually we're going to do a little bit of setup. So before we draw, we want to make sure we've got our units set, because in AutoCAD, and this is one of the differences between computerized drafting and paper drafting. When people drafted by hand, they figured out what scale factor they needed in order to make their drawing fit on their page. In other words, if they were drawing a 100-foot line and they only had 20 inches of paper space, They had to figure out that they were going to have a scale factor of about 1 to 4, 1 to 5. In other words, 1 inch would actually be 5 feet, and that would be indicated somewhere on your paper. And you would have to manually, before you drew any lines, figure out what length line you were going to draw in order to represent that real world dimension. In AutoCAD, we always draw to the real world physical dimensions. And then we don't worry about scale factor until we get ready to plot it. And the computer will help us figure out our scale factor, which is kind of handy because that's usually one of the trickier things. But we need to make sure that our drawings are set up in the units that we want to operate in. So let's take a look at how we check those units. This is a brand new installation for me too, so bear with me for just 1 second. All right, hold on. In the menu bar, and my menu bar does not have format. So let's find this thing, because if mine doesn't have it, I expect yours doesn't have it either. Okay, what we need to do is click on this little drop-down arrow right up here. And we want to go right here and say Show Menu Bar. There. Do that. So hopefully you caught what I did. I clicked on this up here on the Quick Access toolbar. I clicked on this little drop-down, and then I clicked on this that said Menu Bar to make it show. Now we're going to click on Format, and I am on page 20 of Chapter 1 in your textbook. And we are going to format, we're going to talk about our units. Okay, we want to set the length to decimal, or the type for length to decimal. What this does is it sets our length dimensions to inches, or feet and inches. So it sets our length dimensions to English units. There are other options: architectural, decimal, engineering, fractional, and scientific. As long as we're working in English units, we are going to work in decimal. And we want our degrees, our angle measurement, to be in decimal degrees. Now what this means is you won't have to put in degrees, minutes, and seconds. If you've ever taken a surveying course, you know about degrees, minutes, and seconds. If you haven't, that may be foreign to you. And for most of us, we are most familiar with decimal degrees. So 45.5 degrees is 45.5 degrees. 45.5 degrees in the degrees, minutes, and seconds would be 45 degrees, 30 minutes. We're just going to use decimal degrees. It's easier. And down here we can specify that we want our units in inches. Now we want to set our precision. We only need 2 decimal places. You can set that to whatever is appropriate. And what is appropriate will depend on the size of your project as well as whatever standards your employer is using. Your employers will typically have standards that you comply with, and that's what you'll want to comply with. And now we'll just click OK. You can poke around in here and investigate other options that are available to satisfy your curiosity. So we've set up our units. Now we want to set up our drawing area. And we're going to go back into this format. And we're going to set the drawing limits. Now what this will do is kind of tell AutoCAD what space on the plane we're going to draw on. And you'll see that it's asking me to reset the drawing limits. And one of the things we can do is down here at the bottom, the easiest way to do this is go to the command prompt. And that's right down here at the bottom where it says limit, specify lower corner. This is going to be your friend. This is where you can enter specific information to tell AutoCAD, so you don't always have to drag to where you want to go. And what we're going to do is we are just going to click here, and then we're going to press the Enter key on the keyboard so that it accepts the 0, 0 as the lower limit. And now we know that the drawing that we're going to use, because we want to, it's all going to fit on one page, is going to be no more than 12 inches from the X on the horizontal and no more than 9 on the vertical. So we could move our cursor until we get to the point 12, 9, but it's going to be more precise to enter it. Now, AutoCAD is defaulted to 12:9, so we're just going to accept that. What this does is it makes our drawing the same size as our paper so that we don't draw on this great big huge screen and then go to plot it and realize it doesn't fit. Now, my drawing area hasn't changed. It won't until I do something with my view. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to View, Zoom, and this is how you move in and out, and there are other ways to do this, but for right now we're just going to zoom all. And now my drawing area matches what I just told AutoCAD my drawing limits were going to be. In other words, this screen represents a drawing space that is 12 inches wide by 9 inches tall. Now we can turn off the grid lines using the F7 key on our keyboard. So if we push the F7 key, it turns off my grid lines. I kind of like my grid lines. I'm going to turn back on. But we don't have to have them on. Okay, so let's turn them off. Now, there's an exercise in your textbook to draw a star with a line. We're going to go through this real quick. We're just going to freehand draw a 5-pointed star, a lot like how you would draw one if you were drawing it by hand. So to activate the line command, all you need to do is click on it. And you know you've activated because down at the bottom in the command line, it says line. And what it's asking for is the first point. And there are multiple ways we can do this. For now, we are going to use what's called the interactive method of drawing, which means that we are just going to click, and the click will set our points. It's not necessarily the most precise, although you can do it this way. You just have to be very careful and you'd want to zoom in and out a lot. But it does work. And let's just go ahead and freehand sketch a star. And what we're going to do is click. And now when I click again, or when I move my mouse around, I get a line. And so I'm going to click to end that line. And now I can just move to the other end of my line. And one of the things you can do with AutoCAD is you can do what's called a reference. So I just put my cursor on that endpoint, and now AutoCAD gives me a reference line so that I can make the endpoints be on the same horizontal line. You don't have to do that. Yeah. And so I'm just going to click on the points of my star, and I'm done. But AutoCAD doesn't know you're done yet. And what you do is, inside the graphics window, we can right-click, and a pop-up menu shows up, and we can just select Enter, and that closes our line. All right. Now we know this was snap off. If we wanted to snap to our grid points, we could turn our grid points back on and turn snap mode back on. And what you would find is that your cursor would behave a little differently. I'm going to let you investigate that on your own. By turning snap, so go ahead and turn your grid points back on, turn your snap mode on, and draw your star again and see what happens. You can pause this video while you do that if you want. I'll be here. All right, now let's suppose we made a mistake. We need to know how to erase things. What we do is we go up here and we pick the pencil eraser. And again, this is an erase, and down at the bottom, so you can always find clues as to what you need to do in two places. One is in the words next to your cursor. You'll notice right now my cursor says Select Objects. There's also, in the words down at the bottom in the command line, it says Erase Select Objects. So let's say I don't like this line. I can hover on it after having activated the erase, and if I click, it always gives me an option to not do something. So, or I could select another line and erase multiple things at once. And when I am done, there are two options. You can right-click, and it will do it. It made them go away. Now let's say I decide, ooh, I needed to keep those. I can use my undo, and they come back. The other thing you can do is you can erase, and then you can hit Enter on the keyboard. And that will also tell AutoCAD that you are sure, or that you're done selecting. Now, the convenience of right-clicking is you never have to take your hand off the mouse. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to jump all the way to the activity on page 34. Now, I want you to be sure and read the section about the Cartesian coordinate plane, and polar coordinate systems versus Cartesian coordinate systems. When you use polar coordinate systems, you're entering your information a little differently. You're entering a distance and an angle. When you enter Cartesian coordinate systems, you're entering a horizontal and vertical distance. And AutoCAD has got very clear ways that you enter that information, and those are on page 33. And what you're doing is you're putting those in down here at the command line. So we're going to practice those a little bit. But I'm going to go to page 34, and we're going to draw that guide plate. So the first thing we're going to do is the line, and I'm going to start in the lower left-hand corner of my guide plate, and that's going to be my lower corner. Now, before we do this, let's go back to this PowerPoint for a minute, because the other thing you want to know are that your mouse has got other helpful things besides the left click and the right click. This scroll wheel allows you to pan and zoom, and pan is another way to say move things around. So, for example, my origin is right now way down here. I'm actually going to draw relative to that origin, so I want it somewhere else. If I hold down my mouse wheel, I can drag it around, or I can't. And what I'm doing, I'm not dragging my origin, I'm dragging my whole screen. Now, if I roll my mouse wheel toward me, it zooms out. So you'll notice my origin gets further away. If I roll my mouse wheel away from me, my screen gets bigger. So understand those controls so that you can keep things where you want them to be and where it's most comfortable for you. If you double click, it will zoom to extents. In other words, it will zoom to show everything that you've drawn. Okay, so I'm going to start with my lower left-hand corner. And what I want to do is I'm going to put my line in, and I want that lower left-hand corner to be on my origin. Now, it's important to think about where you want the origin of your part to be as you're drawing, because as you create pieces that are going to go together to make other pieces, so like blocks that we're going to insert, the origin sticks with that file. So that will give you your first grab point on a part, and that'll make more sense later. But think a little bit about where your origin is when you start these things. And what we want is we want our origin to be at we want the first point of our line to be at the origin. So I'm going to type the point 0, 0. And I'm going to hit the Enter key on my keyboard. So what I just did was I used what's called absolute referencing. In other words, I referenced to the origin. I told AutoCAD that I wanted my first point to be at that origin. Now that horizontal line is 5.5 inches long. And we had to figure that out a little bit from the dimensioning on our graphic. So what we're doing is on page 34, we are drawing this thing. So you'll notice it doesn't give me the length of this line. What it tells me is that my piece is 8 inches from the lower left-hand corner to this far edge. And it tells me that this cutout here is 2.5 inches. So if we take 8 minus 2.5, we get 5.5. What that means is we want to move 5.5 inches in the X direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give AutoCAD my next point, which is at the point 5.5, comma, so 5.5 is my X dimension, 0 is my Y dimension, and hit Enter on my keyboard. So I'm using absolute referencing. So if I want to go put in my next point, which is my little vertical line, that next corner point, so what I'm doing is I'm giving it the dimension, the coordinates of the corner point. That next corner point is at the same X coordinate, 5.5, but now that line, that corner point is 2.5 inches up. Oops. Let's undo that because I messed that up. Let's try that again. So what AutoCAD just did, so I just messed up because I used what are called relative dimensioning. So I've talked about universal dimension. I haven't talked about relative. Relative dimensioning gives AutoCAD the coordinates of the point relative to the last point you put in. And it shouldn't have done that. 5.5, comma, 2.5. Interesting. Okay, let me try something here. Let me try clicking down here. 5.5, comma, 2.5. Nope. This is what I meant by AutoCAD can be a fickle mistress. And there are always multiple ways to get around this. Okay. What we're going to do is understand that we're in relative coordinates. So we're just going to tell it, fine, I want you to go 0 over and 2.5 up. And that gave me what I was expecting. Okay. Let's do that again. So we're using relative coordinates. In other words, the endpoint is going to be relative to the last point I put in. So now I need a horizontal line that is 2.5 inches long. So relative to my last corner, that is 2.5 to the right and 0 up. Okay? Now the other thing we can do is we can use a direct distance. So I can just tell AutoCAD I want to go straight up, and I go straight up 3 inches, and it will put in my line. Okay. So now we're over up to that slanted piece, and if we notice, there are a couple of different ways we can do this, but that slanted piece, so this corner, is actually, so we got to do a little detective work again, but if we figure out how far it is, how far in it comes in the horizontal direction, we'll find that that is 1.5 inches. And if we compare this 6.5 to this 5.5, we got a vertical of 1. So what we can do, now we're going to the left. So that means that my x dimension is going to be negative 1.5, and my y dimension is going to be 1. Okay, let's go ahead and finish out our shape here by putting in a horizontal line that is 6.5 inches long, and come down here. And what we can do is we want to close this shape. So we're going to right click and say close. And AutoCAD closed it for me. Now, if I double click on my mouse wheel, AutoCAD zooms all the way out so that the edges of my drawing are as close as possible to the edges of my view screen. I typically don't want it that way, so I always will back off one mouse click by scrolling my mouse wheel. So again, if I roll my mouse wheel away from me, my drawing gets bigger. If I roll my mouse wheel toward me, my drawing gets smaller. All right, so we've compared what we've got there to our drawing. We need to put in a couple of circles. We can do that with the circle command. Now on the circle command, when we drop it down, we can see that there are a variety of ways to draw circles. And in the next chapter, we'll talk about some of these others, particularly we'll talk about drawing circles through specific 3 points. But for now, we are just going to use the center and diameter circle. And the reason we are using the center and diameter circle because that is how our circles are dimensioned. So one thing you need to know is that this little symbol here, this circle with the hash through it, that's a Greek letter phi, but it stands for diameter. So what this particular dimensioning tells us is that this is a circle, 2.5 inches diameter. And this little cross in the middle is its center point, and its center point is 3 inches up from this corner and 2.5 inches to the right of that lower left-hand corner. So we're going to choose the center diameter circle. And you can see that AutoCAD is asking for the center point, and the center point is at 2.5. That's the x dimension. That's the how far to the right of our lower left-hand corner, comma 3. That's the y dimension. That's the how far up from our bottom left-hand corner. And now we can push enter on the keyboard, and AutoCAD put the center at the coordinates 2.5, 3. And now it wants me to specify the diameter of my circle. And this circle was a 2.5 inch diameter, so I'll just type in 2.5. And there is our circle. So I typed 2.5 and then hit enter on the keyboard. Now, we could go up and we could click circle again, but we can also right click and repeat circle. So I pushed my right mouse button, this little menu popped up, and I'm going to click on repeat circle. And now I'm going to draw another circle. And my second circle, first thing we need to do is figure out the coordinates of its center point. But what we're going to do is we want to use relative rectangular coordinates. Because if we look, we can see that the center point of this circle is at the 5-inch mark on this line. So it's 1.5 inches from the top, which makes it 5 inches from the bottom, which makes it 2 inches up from the top, or from the center point of this circle. And it's 5 inches over. So we could also use our global or our absolute coordinates. So, but let's see if our relative will work. So we know we want to go 2 inches up and 2.5 inches to the right. So the way we tell AutoCAD that we're using relative, and it'll be relative to the last point we entered. So relative to, and then 2.5, comma 2. And yes, AutoCAD put my center in the right spot. And now I can specify my diameter, which is 1.5. No. What did I do wrong? oops, circle, center diameter. Let me put my center where it should be, which is going to be at 5, 5. And my radius is, or sorry, my diameter, 1.5. There we go. That's better. As I said at the beginning, AutoCAD doesn't always do what we expect it to, even when we think we followed all the steps. We just need to become familiar with our interface and become confident enough to figure out how to make it do what we want it to do. So sometimes following all the steps won't necessarily get you where you want to be, but if you understand alternative ways, you can get there. And with investigation, you can figure out there's some setting I've got in here that's making it not behave quite correctly. But I hope that helped. We will work through more drawings together as this term progresses. For now, I'm going to save this as here we go. Chapter 1, guide plate. Now the default drawing, the default extension for AutoCAD drawings is going to be DWG. It will put that in automatically, just like most Windows applications do, and we'll say save. All right, I will see you soon. The next video that you will want, the next thing that you will want to do is work through all of the Chapter 1 exercises. You've looked at the course calendar by now, I trust. And there is another tutorial in Chapter 1 that goes through some more of these skills and talks about creating tangent lines and tangent circles. And it begins on page 42, the spacer design. I encourage you to go through that with the textbook before you move on. And there is a reading quiz for this chapter that you will find on our course website. And there are then the assignment for this chapter will be to do exercises 1 through 4 that start on page 53. I will see you all again soon.